So today I'm going to talk about the short from 1932, Betty Boop for President. This actually came out 4 days before that year's presidential election day, which is kind of one of those things where you're like, I don't know if that. So were people seeing this like after the election? Were people okay with that? Like, I don't. That part I find interesting. It's basically about Betty Boop is running for president. She's running against Mr. Nobody, who has is just like a stick. He doesn't really even have a face. Betty sort of promises all sorts of cool things, including she says if she's elected, it'll be free jazz, movies, and cabaret, which is honestly a great platform. I'm not joking. That sounds amazing to me. I don't see why nobody's doing that anymore. Seems like a mistake. But this is similar to a one I reviewed before, which is Betty Boop, when My Ship Comes In, which is more about her winning the lottery and how she would dispense this. This is not as extreme as that, honestly, but is still shows all the good she would do, including change mass transit where it would just drop you off right by your house. The people would let cats cross the street, and that garbage guys would drive around in limos, which is not I don't know, it seems like an interesting infrastructure plan from Betty, but whatever. This came out for the 1932 election, which is the first election after the Great Depression. So you can imagine the incumbent didn't do super good because of that. Although despite that, as it's election season, it's interesting that everyone judges presidents based on the economy, and most people are but most of the economy during their term as president has very little, if anything, to do with them, which is why do we do that then? I always find that odd. It's but this guy, the guy Herbert Hoover, he did not do a great job with the economy post the Great Depression and did not help things. So you could blame him for this. And the person he was running against is actually FDR, who would be president from the 30s up until towards the end of World War II. So he he definitely won in a landslide. I think he won all the states for the most part. It was a pretty insane landslide, and the Democrats took control of the White House for the next 20 years. But so this is interesting, them making a short about that election, because it seems a pretty big time in America and the world and everything like that. And it's 1932, so as William Ellman just mentioned, pre the Hays Code. But there's certain things about it that when I bring up 1932, the other thing, and man, the chat's getting to me before I get there, is not only was this, during the Depression, and FDR obviously came up with a lot of good economic policies, and people loved FDR a lot. That's why presidents can only have 2 terms, is because of FDR. But at the end of the short, Betty's celebrating with all these animals, and she's won the presidency, and she shows, there's just a picture of a glass of beer. And the thing with the glass of beer thing is Prohibition was still going on. And despite that, there's a lot of write-ups about this election that don't bring up that Prohibition was a big issue. I would say the fact that it ended with just an image of a glass of beer shows it was a fucking big issue, and it was an issue for people. And I think the idea that FDR wasn't was this new guy, and they knew he would take care of people with economic policies, showed that he would repeal Prohibition, which probably sucked. That's the economy is the worst it ever was, and you can't get drunk too. I mean, what were you supposed to do in your depression? Just jump out a fucking window? That sucks. Nobody wants that. So I I get that, but I think this is a really cute thing. It starts with, I think it says Max Fleischer nominates Betty Boop for president, which was a great little title card. They definitely have fun with this concept. I don't think Mr. Nobody is really trying to be anyone, but Betty Boop does do 2 impersonations, one of Herbert Hoover, and because animation took so long, they actually thought Al Smith, who didn't get the Democratic nomination, is who she's also doing an impersonation of, who is not the actual nominee, who was FDR. So she's actually making fun of someone who was not in the presidential race, which is kind of funny. I guess that meant something to people. One part he mentions he doesn't want to be on the radio. I have no clue if that's a reference or he was man, the radio, it's rotten kids' brains, too much of that radio. It's interesting, but it's supposedly Betty Boop won in a landslide, in the selection. She did very, very well. I think I like cartoons where Betty Boop wins and makes society better. I'm fully on board voting Betty Boop. Don't write her in because, like, this election is scary. But in a funnier one, maybe you can. I do like, but yeah, it is funny that this has an impersonation of a presidential hopeful that didn't, by the time this came out, was not relevant anymore. So hey, it's not unique to Family Guy, kids. What's interesting is this was sort of remade twice. Once in this weird color feature in the 80s that used modern music, and I don't know what to do with that one. But this was actually remade by Famous Studios. So if you don't know the whole Fleischer thing, after the Fleischers were sort of unceremoniously kicked out and left, and it was sort of taken over by Paramount, it became Famous Studios. They remade it as Olive Oil for President, using a lot of the same gags in that. It's sort of, I think several people have said it's a reworking, which you kind of could see, and sometimes I've seen Looney Tunes do it, I've seen other animation studios do it 10 years later. They're like, hey, what if we did that again? It's interesting they did it with a different character, with Olive Oil. So this is a nice little snapshot of how a cartoon would handle sort of political humor, how it would handle a pretty monumental election in American history, to be totally honest. And also how much better a job Betty Boop would have done if you let her be president. I like that the Fleischer brothers have some fun with this. I think the animation is really great and fluid, as it always is. It's just a wonderful early 30s pre-Hays Code Betty Boop short, and I really enjoyed it. I showed it to my kids. We had a fun time. They did ask me, why is that here? What is this? What is that? And I tried to answer the best I could. But it was an interesting Betty Boop short. What I've learned from this, and when the shift comes in, I need to review a Betty Boop short that does not involve her taking over everything and doing an amazing job. I think Betty Boop is a fun character, but I like the idea that she could run things better than anybody. And I don't think Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny could do, or Popeye could do a great job. I think Betty is unique in that she would think about, and that when she's saying the free cabaret, free jazz, free movies thing, she has just donkeys and elephants as the Republicans and Democrats. That was fun. It just has a lot of fun ideas, and I love the Fleischers' like quick little 30s cartoons. Their ambition hadn't fully like blown up to what it would be in the later 30s and 40s. It's you just see like their fun inventiveness. I often, when I watch these, think like, I think the Fleischer brothers, I don't know much about them biography wise, but I feel like, unlike Disney, they like to party a bit more, and you can sort of tell that in this. I hope it all works out for Betty Boop. I hope one day she can run for president, but until then, I just have the fantasy of watching this short from 1932 of Betty Boop for president.